Well, guys, one more RWI, Reimagining Wealth Initiative, touchdown.
Ah,
We have been doing this for more than 2 years, actually.
oh, really?
Each week, yes.
Okay.
And uh, and it's interesting that this is just an informal conversation
Yeah.
between people here that became really good close friends,
Yeah.
but is not something close in the sense that this is open for anybody to chime in, to be part of, and it's so it's exploration. It's a very interesting. Is a type of uh, exploration through a continuous flow of conversations, right? Around what is to reimagine wealth to the third decade to the 20th century, right? Considering in the equation all the craziness, all the bullshitness,
Yeah.
all the things
Everything.
happening at the same time, right? And in that sense, we're not a group, we're not a collective, so we don't have
We're a thought form.
identity. Yes, we don't have identity. It's a formless. It don't has a form, and
Mhm.
uh, and of course, but we are driven uh, by some paradigms, like in the sense that certainly all of us has inside of us, right, uh, the patterns of the type of society that we became,
Mhm.
but we are very open. We were very open to explore new ways of being, new ways of being together, new ways to relate to complexity, especially into complexity in nature. We understand that this is part of the equation too. We have people here exploring all sorts of fields that you can imagine. For instance, Stefan has a very interesting work around active influencing, that he has a relationship, but he goes even beyond active influencing. So it's very interesting work. All the work that Louding does around, if you know Louding, all the work that Louding does around the complexity of ourselves, right? And the way that we bullshit ourselves a lot, and and how we can map out these types of dynamics that is not really, let's say, uh, uh, in the sight of everyone in our daily lives.
Mhm.
Like, not everybody is aware of it,
No,
right? So,
at
yes,
all.
it's very extremely captured, and this generated loads of different types of explorations among through time, and some of them even big, like one of that I started here in Brazil.
Mhm.
There is a cultural Web3 regenerative protocol called
Mhm.
Regenerative Resources that already has more than 20 projects around Brazil
Mhm.
that is part of. So it originated here in this conversation. So it's a very interesting thing to observe this way. And that's it. And so we have Tim here. That it's a amazing human being. He don't like he usually don't like us to to expel him, like make some huge make some uh, a good image of him as someone, as a philosopher, like Chibi likes to put. But he's really a very interesting person, a human being that we really care and have in our hearts here. So yeah, so be very welcome, Amanda. And if you want to just make a quick check-in, just to see your surprise. It was really good to see your surprise in your
Yeah.
in your face. And feel free.
For us to check in, or for me to
Yeah,
check in?
yeah, yeah. You
Oh,
can
okay.
start it. You can start.
I
Yeah.
just came back from a lunch appointment, which is great. It's spring here, but very cold. And currently, I'm just exploring. I'm just feel I came out of isolation, like I'm looking over the edge of the soil like this, like what's happening? So, and maybe, yeah, I was very busy with other type of economics and in different projects before exploring Web4, which was new for me also, which is a linked open data initiative. I think Tiberius knows about it. And my most interesting quote on reinventing wealth was what I said in a Rotterdam project, actually. And there would be infinite pocket money that comes along with your development. So this was like a Teal and Beyond project for holistic consciousness, actually, and mapping holarchic software. And the project actually stagnated a bit because they first wanted to develop Holochain before continuing. At this moment, there is a project called Perspectivism that they're catching up with. So, but this was a very live community that was also living the program, so to say. It was not only a software project.
You think these are people from Holochain, right?
Sorry?
These are the people from Holochain?
No, Nicolas Luck went to Arthur and then helped finalize Holochain. And now he's starting his own initiative on basis of Holochain, Perspectivism. And the other guy, Christopher Larcombe, is now doing, I think, holoweb.io, but I didn't see the website alive, so I'm not sure whether he's doing it still, but...
Yeah, HoloWeb, yeah, you're right, HoloWeb. Yeah. I didn't see too, so yeah.
So these people were in Rotterdam at one point, and I was visiting them a lot, and we had lots of conversations, and we imagined like an infinite potential for growth as a human being. So not on the material level only, but the material level follows.
Amanda, that guy from Germany, that famous guy from Germany, I forgot his name, that you were very related to him. What's his name? It's a guy that is more elderly than us, and
Heiner Banking.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah,
Heiner.
What about him?
I didn't speak for him for a long time. I follow up for the other communities though, but yeah, I visited Heiner a couple of times, and then I visited some of the people that were in the what was it, Global Challenges collaboration group.
Yeah, it was very active in Facebook, if I'm recorded.
Yeah,
right.
But I tried to catch up, but maybe he's abroad. He went to Dubai, I saw, but I'm not sure whether he came back. I'm not sure. So I did ping him. Yeah, so did lots of like Lauren, lots of network keeping, lots of group visiting and traveling after any objective that came along. So yeah.
Hey guys, I'm trying to my phone because I got to pick up the girls now. They're 11, so I got to off at school.
Oh yeah, enjoy. We'll be back.
I'm gonna try to listen in the car, but I
good.
Or else I'll like
I know.
get
Yeah, they'll be loud. Yeah. So, but Vinicius, I was interested in the most far out, edge of what could happen, and I was sort of dissatisfied with the peer-to-peer tapestry of alternatives. I think a tapestry of alternatives which are always in the dark of capitalism is not enough to change the perspective. So I was up for a new paradigm. What's the new paradigm? So must have a new consciousness, a new way of living together, must have another pattern. So I was chasing such thoughts a lot.
Yeah, I know, we know.
What do you mean in the shadow of government capitalism? What do you mean by that?
Well, if it's a tapestry of alternatives that are not really an alternative, but they're always being blocked out or being pushed away by the set paradigm. So I didn't think it was really an alternative, not enough. So there's no commons without commoning, but you know, if the commoning cannot take place because the competition is winning, then there's trouble. I know you are a good example, Tiberius, of making another paradigm and also using the 3 paradigms in your own, what was it, a lab where people can be customer and, you know, they pay the highest tariff, or they can be co-creator and they pay the lowest. So you have dealt with the different paradigms a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But until now, what I see with commoning is, yeah, you can do it, but it's a hobby. You see, and in the end, you lose. That's what I see. So I was chasing other paradigms where that pattern can really move. And I thought just creating your own hobby in a corner is not enough.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it wasn't satisfying. So, and there was some of my criticism also on, well, how the discussion went. And I feel the group has greatly fallen apart in the last 4 years over politics, or maybe you can talk to me how that is now. But I saw on the Facebook page and the group following, and one part didn't think it was left enough. The other part that were new thought it was too left wing and not realistic enough. And then then there's the group that stubbornly going on, and then I think the whole group is just fragmented.
You mean around Michel Bounds?
Yeah.
Yes, there was a sort of a left-right division there.
Yeah.
Which is a bit crazy. But when it comes to paradigm change, there may be models today that are incubating, but they find themselves in not in a proper environment. What I mean is that you know, if everything new gets formed within the old,
I know.
and although the model can be can have the proper DNA, so to speak, it still doesn't have the roots to be able to sustain itself. So among these peer-to-peer initiatives that you may discard because they look like hobbies, there may be
I don't
the
say they
full
were
DNA.
intended like that, but they end up maybe like that.
Well, yes, but now just look at this. All the assets in the world, production assets, are
common.
wrapped into capitalism because they're owned by someone.
Yeah.
So they're under that kind of property.
So they used to be commons before.
Yes, but you know, it requires time for a transfer of these assets to become productive according to these different set of rules. So it's like, you know, in feudalism, the king owned the land, and so capitalism developed on small pieces of land that were not proper for agriculture, and that had no value. So you know, you put an engine and you start manufacturing something on a rock. And then even agricultural land was transferred to private property, and capitalism took over everything essentially. But that's a process. So what I'm trying to say is that, you know, time is of the essence here, and there is a process of change. And there may be, you know, it is possible that some of these projects have everything in them to become mainstream, but it takes time, you know.
But it's hard to defend like comments amidst competition, right? So as soon as somebody said, I'm the boss or I own this, then you lose actually the value of the comments somewhat. And I didn't find very well, very good defense mechanisms in there.
Yeah.
Or even the awareness that it could disappear. So I often feel the group is very idealistic or very systemic in their approach.
Yeah.
Undervaluing the consciousness that needs to be in place to fuel something like that, and also realism about what the context is, what we're in. And then the answer was like inventing a new world system. And I was like, that's not it. And then I was chasing something like, which was more like a technological solution, but then I still missed something. So,
Amanda,
yeah,
I totally agree with you, my dear. You see, for me, when the concept in the practice of the commons is doesn't have any type of statecraft around it. For me, it doesn't need an organization to occur, like a co-op, for instance. It doesn't need activists to talk about it, and in a sense. So for me, the commons is something very, very ingrained, embedded in the nature of our species. Like, but it's down there, right? It's embedded in us, but we forgot it that it's embedded in us. So for me, the commons is something very complex. It's complex, and it emerges as you open yourself to mutually humanize. You know, the in between is between something in between me and you. So for me, this is the commons, right? At its essence.
Yeah. But then you were close to Oliviera.
But it's an interactive and emerging phenomenon. It's an interactive and emerging phenomenon. It's not something that is out there put it.
But you were close to Osvaldo Oliveira, who really embodied, and you also embody, and I think we embody this in some way or another.
Yeah, Osvaldo, was an extremely good friend of mine. He's passed away a lot of years now. And that's the type of exploration that I've been doing. It's and people get lost on it, like they don't understand really. It's because it's not in their understanding of what they consider reality, or the way that we.
And you get criticism, right, for participating in the project like that. It's like I looked him up lately.
No. With me, Laurie, for me, Amanda, it's a little bit different. It's
I know.
People look at me and see me, don't understand. People at large interact with me when I just I just happen to know the touch points to make a conversation flow with other people, because I know what conversations triggers it is out there in society. So so as an empath that I am, someone that exercise empathy, I go to the touch points. But when they become more closer, I start to open myself and open myself to hey, oh, this is happening here, we're doing this way. People come stunned, and they don't understand that this is happening, really. Yeah, it's happening.
And that's the real work, I think, but it's hard work.
It's hard work. It's a real hard work. And the beauty of it is that it happens, right? It happens between the cracks, between the fissures, when people are open to it. And it's not something institutionalized. It's not something, let's say, you don't structure this, right? you don't generate an institution around it, or a structure around it, because it's totally fluidic and impermanent.
I was always looking for more fluid structures. So to make the structures at present more fluid, then you have to let go of certain things, and maybe there's a pattern in there.
You have to let go. Yeah, totally. But you see, I see this exploration with different I don't see it in a one-dimensional way. I see it in multi-dimensional ways, and I see that this, the flow of the in-betweenness between you and me, between our differences, between our different contexts, between our different languages, the in-betweenness, right? And this thing is quantic in a sense that it's not Newtonian physics, right? So you don't have you just flow with it. and you open yourself and flow with it, and you connect here, connect there, pair here, pair there. And when you see some pattern emerges, but it's impermanent, becomes another thing. So this is the thing I have been doing for, all my life almost. So years in a row. So I just want to highlight that, because I know that you know that, Amanda, but I just want to highlight it again, and folks here knows too. So Stefan, you put your digital hand up.
Oh, hi there. Yes, I'm an Englishman in Toronto. Nice to meet you. Yeah, I mean, I think these are good points. I mean, I'm new to the peer-to-peer world, although I work in community development and community projects and stuff. But there's a number of issues around scaling and levels, and also there's the benefit of people coming together when there's new ideas and collaborating. The challenge is when those new ideas mature, sometimes it's good to have an open source basis, because that can carry on and proliferate and have its own. It actually allows it to thrive, and then there's enough for everyone to sort of, or for people to then, because it's actually being used, right? As opposed to it just being an idea that never got matured. But then the other challenge is that once it does get matured and you've got a value proposition, the system, the thing that capitalism does, or capital, is it allows venture capital, doesn't it? It allows money to be injected to one organization that can then leverage value, and then that can, like happened with OpenAI, right? OpenAI was meant to be non-profit, now it's gone for profit, and there's a lot of that. I don't know how much that features into this, but it's like, how much can someone gain the value out of it, which is basically the problem. This guy I know in Toronto, it's actually interesting. He's kind of autistic, this chap. He has one point which I thought was always really interesting. He says capitalism actually isn't, I mean, he takes an extreme view, but he says capitalism actually doesn't have a value system. It's not like itself, it tends to lead to certain behaviors, but it's one of the problems is it's a way of being able to leverage resources ahead of time, and there's nothing else that's so good at leveraging resources. The trouble is we're using up all our resources now because of it, and we're making loads of mess, but it's actually very good at that, because it kind of speculates on the future, and it's got its own way of doing that. But the other problem you've got is there's a whole load of people who make their money out of gaming that system. Does that make sense? Like the amount of people in capitalism who are helping to make the world a better place because they're evolving new ideas and therefore accelerating them, versus how many people are playing the property market, playing the stock market, playing the game of the system that is accelerating value generation, has become completely disproportionate, right? So, and they've got everyone in that game now as well. So they get like the middle class to be in the same games. They don't want to stop the game, right? Because it get them a few shares, and I think in some ways that conversation at that scale is a kind of philosophical kind of sort of situation. But so this is where I think one of the troubles with what you're saying there is, if you want things, people starting to talk about things becoming mainstream, like you say, is it again this scale question? Like it seems to me that you need to address the scale problem. What if things are kept within certain bounds and yet can still do something meaningful? We're having this interesting discussion about this of networks. Where is there somehow a plausible scale? Because I think there's more than one scale that happens, and they work in different ways. And at the moment, everything gets lumped together, and either someone wants to go, it either becomes this kind of ethereal discussion on capitalism, or to carry on.
Or it becomes something that can be acquired by the non-comments. So like gentrification, it becomes even working for transnationalism, or taking away property, or taking away ownership. If it's too idealistic, and if you're not realistic about these sort of mechanisms, then you're playing into it.
Interface with them. You can just basically create a load of value for someone else to exploit, basically. I mean, that's what artists end up having a slight challenge, because they end up being the forefront of gentrification, right? You bring in the artists, they do their art, they make an area funky, and then the developers go in and the prices all go up, and then the artists move somewhere else, you know? And so there needs to be, the other question though is is there a hybrid approach, or is there a way, which is I think what the new technology is hopefully trying to do, but like where's the value generation? Because otherwise you just find that ideas just get chewed up and repurposed, and you know, and what the problem is, intellectual property has got some uses, because the idea is that by locking down intellectual property, you can mature stuff enough that it actually gets to being useful. Because there's two sides to it. If you open it up to the commons, together we'll make it useful, and now it has value when it wouldn't have done. But the other thing is, it could just get dissipated, and a kind of a half-assed version that still will make some money gets spun off, and basically there's no room for you in the market anymore because someone else has basically filled the market, right? So intellectual property, because they taught that a lot at the London School of the Arts and stuff like this, you know, the intellectual property is there because it gives you a chance to create a way to have your ideas marketable, and it gives you a chance to protect your ideas enough so that you can scale it. And now someone else can come along and they can make a better version of it. There are, you know, it's not impenetrable, and that's fine, because that's the good side of it in theory. But you sometimes need to be able to hold on to your idea, because you know you can spend 10 years on something and the last 6 months is what makes it viable. If someone comes in after 10 years, steals the idea, and puts in a half-assed version of it in 3 months because they got more money, that's a
what
problem.
I say. Right? People need to grow up at some point.
How to deal with that?
Yeah.
Does that happen a lot, would you say, or
Sorry?
that kind of people coming in and taking the value and exploiting it after someone's developed it in the commons?
Well, at some point, I thought that the political discussion that Tiberius referred to was so fierce, and the realism was so much lacking, that I was really thinking that the whole group came together just to speak nonsense at some point. I was so upset with it. Like, how can you miss it, that, you know, the patterns that you were every day talking about are not working for the most of the group here. And even within the group, it wasn't commoning what we were doing. And the person speaking for commoning has died, is Silke Hilfrich. She was the only one saying there's no commons without commoning. So that means you have a correctional system within your group where you can say, oh, but this is not commoning what we're doing, so something must be wrong. So then we have to readjust. You know, and these sort of types of discussions are, I think, very frequent within these sort of groups, and very intellectualized also, very mental. I'd say a lack of room for resonance or certain other parts of, how do you say that, intelligence that we could address to be conscious about what we're doing. So I don't know. That's where I was left.
The map of meaningful life could be kind of interesting here. I don't know if you heard of it. It's developed by a lady from Holland, actually.
What is it?
Lips. It's called the Map of Meaningful Work. By Lips. It's the map. It's her name is. I put the link in the chat, but she has a dimension from the middle, which is inspiration in the middle, and the outside is reality of circumstances. Her name is Marjolijn Lips-Wijsma. It's like it's a kind of
new for me. That's okay.
Yeah, it's let me just show you the website, but her name's it's a Dutch name. It's hard to pronounce that one. I mean, yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah,
maybe Jewish.
Maybe I'll put it in the chat.
It sounds also German, actually. Weisman.
She might be. She's.
It can be the same.
Yeah, this is the link. This is the website. Oh, direct. I see. Meeting group chat. There you go. So this is And it has different dimensions for meaningfulness, right? Or meaningful work. And one is between, so in the, you've still got your reality and you might need to go into inspiration, which is useful. Sometimes you need that because you just can't get anywhere without some inspiration, right? Yeah. And then there's also though, but if that inspiration isn't connected to the reality of circumstances, then it also kind of over time hasn't got far to go. So you're kind of trying to find this balance between
but this was interesting with the new map, the before perspectivism is now being made, because their maps of meaning are being made by the persons themselves. So you make your own maps of meaning and they all fit into like a fractal pattern, a hierarchical pattern that you make yourself, and within that structuring, things can be matched and be understood very differently than we understand them now, very linearly. Like in capitalism, you have to make like a profit, and then you have to linearly plan, like maybe with a waterfall method. Unless you're a designer, then you are allowed to be agile, but otherwise it's just waterfall way throughout the whole system, and that just does not leave any dimension for consciousness growth, I think. Only within the boundaries.
Is that a particular tool that you're talking
we're
about?
actually stuck as a humanity. We're stuck within. I think, for my feeling, we can be much more than what we're now doing.
Is that fractal? Is that a methodology that you're mentioning?
It's a hierarchical, so like it's nested. How do you say that?
That's interesting. When that ties in, I mean, this process is more dynamic. This one that you use is more about the dynamics between. So you can never, like we talk about meaning. If you look at meaningful action as being
hierarchical. Let me see if I can. It's like this.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they had a structure which also became rigid again, because we were looking at it, and we, as human beings, to live like this is another thing in the group that is very fanatic about these sort of issues.
Yes.
We try. But this is sort of a way of patterning that if you pattern information like this, then and you make people make their own ontology, then it's much more fluid already than we are now currently having. You see, so this is what we're trying to do, I think, with perspectivism. I didn't get the update, but this is why Nicholas went to Arthur, because he saw Scepter. I showed Scepter to Nicholas. I said, you have to watch this video because this is really interesting. I think it's cool. So you should look, because it's going to help you further. And then he looked at it together with Christopher. And they were so wildly enthusiastic about the steps already being taken in that direction that they decided to stop NewMap, stop programming, and they went, like Nicholas went to Holochain to help program it, and then finalize his thing on top of that. So that's what happened. But this is the plan.
This is like the Ken Wilber type work, isn't it? The Ken Wilber influenced work.
No.
It's like Ken Wilber, or
yes, it's very close to Ken Wilber, integral, etc.
Yeah. So we've been looking at something. It's something I developed, but it's a mid-range theory approach. So instead of working with the hierarchy, because so it works from the middle out with a regime. Yeah. So the top is more accuracy and perspectivalism, and underneath is complexity and nestedness. Yeah. And the middle, the middle recapitulates at different scales. So you've got what it's like to be me at home, what it's like to be me in an organizational setting or a circumstance, and I go from being myself to having a role. So
we still had to translate, right? From that situation, we had like a theory how to live in a community like this, with such a system. But then we still had to make a translation to the current paradigm. And I believe we are now moving out of the translation paradigm. I don't believe in transition. I think we are about to transform as a collective.
Transform. Well, you know what's an interesting one as well? In applied theatre, there's a nice idea that we don't transform, we transport. So we've been doing a little bit of work. So what you do is you're there when you go to see a play, you're not transformed per se, or if you go into something, so you're transported somewhere else. You come back, and through that process, you may or may not be transformed. But there's like a transportation to some other reality. Yeah. That's what we're kind of exploring with these infusion space sessions, where we're trying to set things up so that if we go from somewhere in the paradigm, we get transported somewhere else, we explore in another type of spatial aesthetic space, and then we come back to the more codified world that we, for better or for worse, we're talking in, right? Because there's actually multiple paradigms out there, but let's just say whatever paradigm these people are talking in, let's go and transport and come back. And that's been something we've been, well, I've been working, I developed this thing called infusion space modeling. And it's kind of linked to that.
But if enough people get to be transported and maybe transform, then they take the message to the collective, because the path already has been pioneered. So it's easier to walk for a new person.
It can open up. Yeah, I mean, the idea is in some ways that you're trying to, basically, rather than tell them, even when they come back, it's more like they would ask someone else where they would, what they would find when they get transported, rather than telling them what they found, because what they find might be what's for them. So it's very participatory. So the idea is to bring back canvases where you do participatory diagrams. So basically you have sort of structures and you just populate your diagrams with what, and then you work on whatever it is that the preferred outcomes are that you're working with at that time. So you have to scope it down quite a lot more. So it has to be like, are we working with the farmers and their ecosystem? Are we talking about working with maker spaces and how engineers are working? Because they each operate in a very different set of considerations, right?
Wonderful.
But I'd like you to see, if you ever see that map of meaning, because she's from Holland, and I don't, but she's moved to New Zealand, the lady who developed it. But she's really lovely, and it'd be interesting if what you're talking about is connecting to that. They've got like a meaningful work approach out of that as well, because they've got this whole thing called the Map of Meaning International now, and but there seems to be a bit of a vibe for that in Holland, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, they're very fluid, I think.
Very well.
Fluid in discovery.
Yeah, it's quite well. The nice thing is that you can either do it on the floor, but you've got these different dimensions. So one of them is unity with the self. Sorry, unity with others. So you've got meaningful by unity with others, which the commons is quite strong at in some ways. And you've also got expressing your full potential. So you've got these balances between. So that's another. There's tension, but there's no. It's not one. The nice thing about that, when you do that, you can't say that one or the other is it. Certainly not when you're living it. Because it's a balance, because you have too much unity and you lose yourself. You have too much expression of your full potential and no one cares because you're not connected to anyone. So you're in this kind of paradox all the time where you want to have a bit of both. And I think that's the tension that maybe that finding a way to work through that could be really helpful in these.
Should this be compulsory for any higher management that want to keep their domain?
What's that again?
No, I think we're toppling, right? You know, you get this idea in organizations that everybody in the mid and the ground layers of the organization knows that things are no longer working. The only people not understanding it is the CEO, board of directors, and the middle management. That they don't get it. So they keep restructuring and holding on, and then until shit hits the fan. So,
I mean, in some ways, that's the problem with narrative, right? They're paid to write the narrative all the time. And the trouble is, that's the trap as well, because in some ways, they have to keep writing the narrative, even if the narrative is not true. And
and they hand out the tasks in the old narrative.
What's that?
They hand out the tasks within the old narrative.
Exactly.
So they keep perpetuating one ontology across all over, and then not allowing anything else. And everybody already knows, so we sometimes start smiling, really. I say that we get stuck in smiling. Like, that's not going to work. So I think as we're in that part, maybe in paradigm shift, then it might go rapidly at some point.
Yeah, well, I love these. See, what I found interesting is if you go into nursing models does some really interesting work, including systems work, but it's not known too much. And they do a lot of mid-range theory. Their work is called mid-range theory because you can't separate the nurse and the patient dynamic in the way that you can with the doctor. Well, the doctor, in some ways, has to maintain a little bit of objectivity so he doesn't get too sucked in, because they have to kind of think, you know, in a very kind of a little bit of a clinical way, right, at times, so they can't get too overwhelmed. But this kind of mid-range theories that they have, where they're kind of, you're sort of nested in there, right? They're nested in the, because the rapport and the relational aspects that a nurse provides is as important often as the amount of injections they're able to administer, you know, if probably more so, right? So, but you're in this interesting thing because obviously you still have to find a balance between caring for the number of patients you've got to deal with, and you know, there's the reality of the circumstances, right? Yeah, I've been quite interested by some of that work. Lauren, did you want to say something there? I didn't know if you put your hand up, did you? You're munching. Yeah, no, you keep going. Oh yeah. But yeah, so this is something actually we've been talking about, because we've got a gather town. So we've got a space where we've got like a virtual space where we've got some of these activities actually in there, so you can walk around. So one of the nice things I think is, okay, one of the things that can be interesting is we often talk about what we need to do. And have you heard of clean language? I don't know if you've heard of clean language and the work of David Grove, but he talks a lot about where things are and what kind of things they are, like a metaphor. And often what you find is if you want someone to say what something is, then that's great if you want to codify it. That's great for level 3 on your diagram and level 2. But at level 0, you almost need to have what they call a flat ontology. You almost need to not codify things and say, this is here, this is there, but just find where is the meaning in this landscape? And yet the landscape is kind of the same thing, but just with different levels of different undulations. So I think that's what I see. I like Wilbur's work, but what I find is that the levels piece starts to break down because it prioritizes going up. And but in indigenous culture, they prioritize going down, because down is where life and complexity is. Up is where you can see well, but it's dead, effectively. So somewhere in the middle is where our thoughts and feelings meet. And this is where, you were talking about active inference there, Vinicius. And the reason that active inference brings that in is because basically it recapitulates the whole of how our understanding of how we think is, or how we are, our thoughts are not the main game at all. Our feelings aren't the main game at all. Action is the main game. It's about acting in the world at all scales. How do we act in our ecological niche? How does our cells know how to act from when we're an embryo all the way up to becoming and differentiating and being what we are? They're trying to act and make sense and resolve uncertainty. And at our scale, feelings of our body, how do we keep ourselves closer to homeostasis? How do we make sure that we're satiated? And thoughts about how we're doing in terms of our trajectories are to calibrate how we act. It's how we act that matters. It doesn't matter what I'm thinking when I get run over by a car. It matters I got run over by a car, right? It matters that I walked in the road. If I thought pink elephants were going to come down the road and it stopped me walking down in front of a car, then those thoughts have served their purpose. So, and you find Ken Wilber's work in that they've still got the idea that thoughts are you get to this singularity idea, right? Singularity is great for accuracy and purity. And you see it most in Germany and Japan, right? Because they love purity, right?
Yeah.
But going down, like the Celtic way or the African way, it gets muddy and dirty, right?
Yeah.
But that's where complexity is. But you can't be so accurate. You can't build Volkswagens and Hondas from down there, right? But what you can do is you can hold a lot more meaning, but you can't hold that meaning in classified what. You pass the feather around and you just, it's where the feather is that has the meaning. You have to find the meaning, right? So basically the indigenous technologies or social awarenesses are expert at complexity, but they're not very good at accuracy. And our processes are very good at accuracy,
or
but not very good at complexity.
I must object, because one of the reasons I got back to Vinicius is the next. Vinicius, you connected me ever to Nosfera. And actually Paul started to calculate the accuracy that our matching with the topics was, and he couldn't calculate how accurate that was. And he's a mathematician.
Wow. Yes.
He was so, like, whoa, surprised, because the fluidity made it exactly on all sorts of topics that he really liked. And it was just suddenly like, whoa, how is it possible? Even the wording, everything was right in place. So he's still completely surprised by that. And then I believe that the Aboriginals, of course, they dream the world together.
Yeah.
And I think the Native Americans also, they dream the world together. So that must be of an extreme accuracy as to become.
Well, it's accurate, but it's accurate in the sense that they're accurate to the nature of the world that they're dreaming. Because, see, in our world, we are accurate in the sense, say I've got a forest and I don't know what's going on, right? And there could be wolves and all of that. Well, we resolve that. We get really accurate. We just chop the whole lot down, put tarmac on it, and I know exactly what's going to happen. I haven't really solved the problem, but you understand though. But in our paradigm, we're accurate now. We can say we've got a car park, right?
That's a very low paradigm. Yeah.
Exactly. But if you go and stay in the complexity and you haven't got that option, right?
Yeah.
Then you don't know what's behind that tree. You don't know where the bear is. You don't know where the. So you almost like, because I was up at this. Native community up north here, and they talk about going out in the snow, in like in the winter, and you just have to kind of find your way, and you almost imagine what the animals would do. So you get more accurate, don't get me wrong, so I'm not saying you're not right, but what I'm saying is that it's not accurate in the sense of, because you're saying you're accurate in this kind of dynamical way. You're attuned. That makes sense, but you have to continually be attuned. It's not like you can say, "Okay, I've got the answer now. Write it down and it's done."
Drop it. No.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that's what you're saying, but in active influence, it's interesting. It's a computational neuroscience, so it's actually done through math from first principles, and there's a new field called biophysics. So they're basically, because normally it was all physics, and now if they bring in biophysics, they're bringing in basically what we would call feelings, and the dynamics of feelings is basically is starting to be computationally plausible, because it's essentially the baseline for what we know we are is feelings. Like the thoughts is the extra game in town that humans have got a higher version of, if that makes sense. Like thinking and narrative and all of that is this extra layer. But the feelings are where we still, like if you ask a mathematician when they've got their answer right, they feel they've got it right. So we're still, cognition is still ultimately paired to embodiment.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've done any work with embodied cognition or stuff, but that's kind of, go on.
The tools to deal with complexity, in my understanding, are the most undervalued tools that we have as a species in our current society that we live in. That is for instance, intuition. Intuition is a tool to deal with complexity. We don't really value intuition in society at large. The uncertainty is something, it can become a tool to deal. Uncertainty in the sense that you don't know, because you really don't know what is going to happen in the next second, right? In the next minute or in the next moment. That's not put a chronos, a Chronos reference there of time, but in the next moment we don't know. Because we really don't know. We think that we know, right? We think that we know because we think that through the type of science, what we consider science, the type of science that we generate, we think that we created the tooling to generate accuracy, to generate the capacity to understand, what is happening around us. But actually, it's very blurred, and it's only a little patch, a tiny patch of what can be considered, something that you know of, oh, I know this. So, in this sense, I understand that the way that we establish truth, or the way that we establish accuracy, the way that we establish what is real and what is not, it's still a game of numbism, of you being numb. You're not really developing. You're not giving space, to oxygenize all sorts of tooling that complexity and evolution gave to us as a species, as a social and empathic species, because we are afraid of complexity. We are extremely afraid of complexity. We tend to try to simplify it, to reduce it to systems, or to control and command it, because it's something so ginormous for us that I don't say this like it's for everybody, because everybody can, when I say everybody, Stefan, I say everybody, actual everybody in all societies around the planet. I say more like the more urbanistic societies that we became after the Second World War, right? We became extremely urbanistic, extremely technological driven societies, and we lost the connection with complexity. Complexity is all around us. We are complex, but we lost the capability to deal with complexity, to live through complexity, to thrive through complexity, right? We lost this ability, and because our ancestrals, fellows, those that had nomadic lives, migrating through all the planets, they were literally embedded in complexity, like other species, other life forms in this planet. So I think that we lost that. We really lost that. And now I see people trying to regain it, to understand it, opening some space in their lives. Not people at large, okay? Some folks, some people trying to to understand how can we regain this capability to live through and thrive through complexity without thinking or that what it is, or that you are in the control. Like you have to detach yourself from all the tooling and the control mechanisms that we created to dealt with large systems that we created, this large urban technological systems to deal with hundreds, dozens of millions, hundreds of people, or billions of people. That is a control command in order for us to regain this lost but still embedded in us connection with complexity. That's my take, my friends. I just want to add that I think that we have the tools with us, like intuition, like impermanence, you know. Try to live your life, try to live your life without you trying to control your life 24/7 or plan your life 24/7. Open your life to unexpected that is everywhere. Everywhere you look, the unexpected is around you. Open your life to flow with the unexpected, with the impermanence, right? Give more space to intuition as a tool to deal with complexity. That's my take. Yeah. So there's someone here that we didn't even have the chance to hear his voice. That is Tim. Hey, Tim.
Hey there. Wow. Yeah. Wow. This is a great conversation. I really enjoyed listening to that. So yeah, no, no need to add much to that. Well, there's lots to do, but that's you pretty good description of a lot of things there and a lot of ideas. So wow, that's really neat. And it's nice to meet you, Amanda.
Thank you.
I pinged a little book in there that came to mind as I was listening, just on those latter themes, right? It's a book I read a long time ago. A Canadian writer, I guess. Husband of
Oh yes.
former Governor General. And it's a pretty thick book, but its theme is pretty much that idea, I think, of what you were speaking to when you were trying to differentiate and sort of distinguish those different kinds of complexities or and the different senses of the word accuracy or what have you. You know what I mean? And that whole scientific management sort of notion coming into things. So he really traces the history almost all the way back to sort of like sophists, from the very beginning, and traces it all the way through to the modern day management consultant and etc. Right? So it's an etiology of the phenomenon you're talking about. It's how it came to be, I think, largely, or it was it's the workforce and the foot soldiers of the journey away from the things you talked about going away from, and towards the things you talked about going towards. So anyway, it's a good read around these things. But yeah, I don't know what even to add to what you said. There's so much there. I guess just to sort of say hello and introduce where I tend to think about is maybe a little more at the mechanism level, and to make a really vast maybe analogy, the whole it's kind of you sort of talked about different poles of capitalism and commoning and things like this, and transformations or changes in attitudes and approaches to things in really fundamental ways, and what you called the transformation, and then what Stephen talked about in terms of sort of well, the situation is what it is, and people, and as Tiberius mentioned, you're sort of emerging new things from within existing systems and such. So there's always that sort of ambient extant reality that you're faced with, right? So to make kind of a broad kind of analogy, it's kind of like a bit of, I think, with the nature nurture debate, right? People said, oh, is it this, is it that? Well, it's both, right? So I think it's a case where a lot of this multidimensionality and intermixing and not blocking things out into categories is a good intuition, a good ambition to try to conceive of the methods and the systems and the technologies which can afford the capability and the capacity to enable a little more of the kind of parities that would enable what you're talking about to co-emerge in a, because I guess my sense of things is that it's a question of being befuddled. It's not a question of always some sort of sharp moral axe to grind. It's often more a question of being confused and befuddled and what to do and getting afraid of that feeling.
Yeah. And we didn't put in the mix here, Tim, all the explorations that we have been doing about communications, interspecies communication, right? Interspecies interactions, and how that changes completely the game, right? Even the conversation, right? If we start understanding that other species, other forms of life has its own agency, how can we? What type of conversations we would really have been having here now, right now? Because all the conversation that we're having here is through our lenses, or anthropomorphized lenses, right? But what type of conversations we really would have here, considering, the agency of the trees, of the rivers, of other species? What type of conversations we would have here in a peer-to-peer or commons perspective, right? It changes completely, doesn't it? Because we just use the type of relationship that our species has for loads of time now, not the entire time of our existence, but at least 10,000 years or 8,000, 10,000 years is a very extractive one. It's very extractive and very productized one, like treating everything that is not us or even us as a product, or as an asset, right? Or something to be treated, something to, you said the word nurture, right? Something to nurture with commons or way of life. So it's crazy when you put the equation, when you consider that we are not the main game in the block, or we're just one of millions of other games that is happening in this planet. For instance, the perspective changes completely, and what type of conversations we can have with this understanding, with this framing of reality, right? There's not so much conversations occurring in this sense. Do you guys agree with me? There's not so much conversations occurring in this sense. There's niche conversations around this, right? Right, Tim? That even me and you, we are part of, but there's niche conversations. Okay, so go on, Stefan.
I like that. Yeah, I mean, I like you just said there are these millions. Yeah, there's millions of games going on. I like that because we are like I like the idea that we have to kind of, especially in our work and life, we play slight games, and that's not a bad thing sometimes, but it brings us back to that other thing we've been exploring. It's just like, like an agent-based. So rather than like there's systems out there and there's this out there and there's that out there, it's like, well, there's also like there's basically millions of agents. We're all in our own little space, our own niche, our own ecology at the time we're at, and sort of that coming from an agent-based approach is pretty new. It happens in the meditative sense, but it's kind of like, but a lot of the time we're not in a meditative state, right? So it's great when we do it, it's like we all go to a meditative state, and then maybe we talk about where each of us are when we go there, but they're also more singular in the way those experiences are, so it's easier to digest. But we're all in a kind of a dynamic, and what about working from within that more? And the complexity actually gives you half a chance of doing that, because what you find is once you go there, the Western one just can't keep up. It just basically can't, doesn't know what to do. And Tim's posted something. Let's have a look here.
You see, Amanda, I'm actually involved with a co-creation. Me and Tim,
Beautiful.
we are actually involved with the co-creation of all sorts of interfaces with other species.
It's a great resurfacing like this, like, wow.
What?
So thank you.
Yeah. And me and Tim, we are actually involved, even TB a little bit, with a mutual friend of us called Danilo Weiss. I don't know if you know him, Danilo Weiss. Danilo Weiss. Do you know Danilo Weiss? I think that you don't know. So he's someone that came from the field of complexity, studying complexity through the lenses of networks and through the lenses of abundance, right? And he arrived to this place to generate all sorts of haptics and sensorial equipment, and at the same time considering all the indigenous culture, to dealt with complexity, to dealt with life. And he's actually doing amazing work around this. If Tim, I won't be able to share here, but if you can share a little bit, just to Amanda have a little bit of understanding of the type of work he has been developing, is going to be nice.
Sure, yeah. So it seemed to me that he started out working with just hooking up sensors and electrodes to plant matter and fungal material way back kind of thing. And then it seemed that once he hooked that up to equipment that was able to display the signals and such, or maybe even listen to them, I think maybe, I mean, at times perhaps, he was using it as a way of sort of almost outreach and engagement with like young people around nature, and just sort of almost just sort of looking almost, I think it seemed to create these little opportunities for little spark light bulbs moments where a young person just all of a sudden realizes, oh, that's a living thing, or just somehow sees a gateway, maybe even into science, or wanting curiosity or getting curiosity about anything to do with the interaction, but just almost like a metaphor. So he was, but then technologically keep developing things. And then he set up a thing where there was an armband, which he had donated from, I forget who exactly, but it's a haptic armband. So it adjusts the pressure, the vibrations, and the sensations on your forearm in concert with the brain signals of a canine. So that, and he's working with a fellow that is somehow studying that phenomenon of canine neuroscience. And so there's sort of this experimentation with that sort of interspecies connection or communication through these sorts of signals. And then subsequently, he's been, I guess, extending that to some large scale communications type, I think, notions around, well, something called symbiototem, which is a physical installation, kind of grounding in a large language model, which is able to articulate on a kind of factual, veridical, sort of grounded basis, but also culturally and locally attuned basis, is able to articulate information or knowledge, or it's an early exploration, so the words are tough because they're all wrong right now, but basically, in the most facile way of saying it, giving a voice to like a river or a forest or something like that, quite literally using AI, generative AI, to encode a model that contains the sort of ability to elocute facts about the river and the geography and the cultures around it, and obviously reflecting the people who produced that AI. And that's actually what they're exploring now, is what is a sort of a guide to creating non-human and more than human avatars, for instance, in a virtual reality, for instance. If there is to be some sort of generative AI produced avatar that is somehow making claim to a legitimate representation of some more than human or non-human life form, what would constitute the adequate, necessary and sufficient, so to speak, thinking and considerations and diligence and care that should go into that process. So that's a quick summary.
Yeah, here's a landing page that he created, Amanda, that you can explore. I put in a chat for you.
Thank you.
Symbiosis, from Greek living together, is any type of close and long-term biological interaction between organisms of different species, right? Poiesis can be understood as the bringing forth of the unseen true nature of things. Symbiosis then represents the emergence of the imperceptible via the making with other living beings. Currently, it exists as a force field attracting like-hearted souls around interspecies synesthesia through art and science. Beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It still
when you
brings
go
me to mapping. We keep mapping.
Yeah,
As we leave the structures, we go and map anew. And we have to find our way. See? So
yeah, he started an open mapping dynamics in Kumu.
Yeah.
You know Kumu, right?
Yeah.
So
Great.
here you can explore what is actually happening in real time, because he's updating this almost weekly. Not daily, but weekly. So you have Tim here, you have me here, right? And we're doing this type of exploration.
That's beautiful.
And you have people coming from all over the planet doing this. So this guy here is from India, the guy that is actually doing the here you go. Akash is from India, right? He's doing the more focused work around the haptics for dogs and humans, the connection for dogs and humans. Ingvild is from Europe. I don't know from where is she from. Tim, do you remember where Ingvild is from?
I don't actually know exactly where she was from. I believe at one point she may have been in the Netherlands when we were speaking with her.
Yeah, because I think she's close to you, Amanda.
Oh.
Maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh. And you have Amanda. It's a brilliant mind, Amanda. It's very sensible. It's incredible, Amanda. And really.
What's her name
Here's
again?
me. Her name is Luana. Her name is Luana. I'm just going to put a little bit closer here in order for you to see.
Yeah.
And we are talking about this concept of symbiocracy, right? How can we redefine? How can we redefine for the third decade of the 20th century democracy, considering the other species? So we have been articulating conversations around symbiocracy, right? So here you go. So there's loads of things for you to explore here. I think that this is going to consume you at least for one day. Because there's loads of things here. Everything you hear is clickable, right? And they created a guide for non-human characters, to generate non-human characters for fiction, for storytelling, because it's not out there, right? Yeah, here you go. There's so much things, and you can actually see what's happening. Oh, and there's Superfluous Man. Would you like to talk, TB, a little bit about Superfluous Man? TB and Tim. I think TB, it would be nice to TB talk a little bit about Superfluous Man.
Where is it? I didn't see your chart.
Here, Superfluous Man. Are you
seeing yes,
now?
I saw your chart. Yes. Let me see the connections that you put. Let me see the context.
The context is that we already started to co-create a speculative fiction storytelling, Amanda.
No, I mean the context of your graph.
He wants you to click on
more of your graph.
He wants you to click
graph,
it.
And this graph is the context is around the work of Sympoiesis that Danilo.
Yes.
Danilo is totally involved with, and we are part of it too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, interesting. Well, it's a character. It's a fictional character that we're creating, and this is. I'm writing a blog about it. It's a simple way to put it is art to the service of technology. How art, prose, text, images, whatever, can actually help fund technological projects. I think that's the essence of my take from this. And Superfluous Man is a character, and there is a story built around this character, and that story is designed to entertain, educate, provide a sense of purpose to people, hope. So it's a mixing between fiction and actual technology that people develop, right, for a certain cause or purpose. But yeah, the character itself, I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, we have different characters. We have Tony, we have Luna, that is the dog. Tony is someone that collects inorganic residues, right? And we are actually making this story happen in Madagascar,
Yeah,
Amanda, because there you have the disparities of a very urban, polluted environment with the richness and biodiversity of the type of forest that you encounter there. So you see this huge contrast between, these two environments. And he lives in the middle. He lives within the forest and within the highly urbanized, polluted, and picking up all sorts of inorganic wastes, inorganic residues to recycle, right? And so it starts like this. I'm not a good reader for that type of. Tim is a better one, but I don't know if Tim is up to it. Yes. Well, I'm just going to try to read a little bit for you to have a taste, Amanda, of the writing itself, right?
Yeah.
Here comes the sun, loud, vibrant, unique presence on the horizon. Every day it appears in the sky on a schedule previously defined by the creator or explained by Big Bang theory, unless it is interrupted by stubborn rains and insistent clouds. Though we cannot see it, still it is there. And I'm here, having to generate my own energy to get out of the bed this Monday. The ways they always come back. And Mondays are usually good for those who go through the urban garbage of cities claiming to be civilized, while still failing to separate their waste or do selective collection, right? Wait a minute. That is why I make an effort and try to wake up early, not to look for something new, not for something that is going to transform my life. I wake and get up out of bed to go outside and make the best of garbage. I try. I remain with my eyes closed for a few minutes, only there's no more time. I feel a wet, gooey lick all over my face. Time to wake up and see what Luna is up to this new day. So here you go. You have a taste of it. This is the first episode, and we're already going to the third. We have already the second episode. We're going to the third one. So it's really, 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 really exciting, right? It's really exciting. And if you want to chime in, in 15 days, bi-weekly, we make a touchdown. We sync up to see the explorations, the writings, the connections with new projects and things like that. And if you want, you can be part of this too. So here you go. This is an invitation. It's
very lovely. Well, I enjoyed it a lot, so it's interesting to see what's going on, and it was a great conversation with everyone.
I would add something practical around this thing here, because I heard some comments from Stefan earlier about intellectual property and its role.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, so you know, keeping at it and trying to close loops in this peer-to-peer economy. You know, the problem is that there's a lot of bridges that are not there when you want to transfer resources from the traditional world to what I call the new peer-to-peer world. That is there. The peer-to-peer world is there, but it's, you know, it's small and it's within. Okay, it's like forming within a uterus of this current world. It is undeniably there, and it builds its own economy. You know, but it doesn't have all the tentacles into the pools of resources, right? So how do you do when some of the mechanisms are incompatible? So for example, there's a bunch of people that design some hardware open source and do it yourself. Okay, so obviously these people are not making a product because they're purposefully designing it for anybody to be easy to make it, right? And so these people are not engaging in the market. They're not designing a product. They're not. So within capitalism, they cannot sustain their activities. That's within capitalism. And there's always people asking, like, but how do you make money, you know? And I find this question a bit outside of the scope of what people do, because the economy and life is not just about money, right? The proper question is, how do you close the loop? How do you close the loop? How do you get something coming towards you after you made something for humanity, for civilization, for whatever, for a community, for some people around you? Okay, how do you close that loop? Because if you're only on the giving side but never receiving anything, that's not sustainable. Okay, but closing the loop is not just how do you get money. You know, it's the how do you get what you need. What are the channels that we can open so that stuff starts flowing back towards you? And maybe there is a few steps, a few nodes before stuff gets back to you, right? It may not be just a transaction, a direct thing. Here's my apples, give me your money, or give me your tomatoes. Okay, that's very simplistic. That's just one step transaction, right? It may be that there's like 5 steps before something comes back to you, but we can formalize these processes. We can you know, we can put them in place in a formal way so that we're guaranteed that the loop is closing somehow. And at this moment in time in peer-to-peer, what we're looking at is, maybe somebody will donate something to me. So there's a maybe there. There is nothing that is set in stone, that is formalized. And there is a lot of uncertainty. Will we be able to sustain ourselves or not, right? So this what you saw here with the Superfluous Man, you know, this fiction and the collaboration between artists and technologists, that symbiosis that we're trying to create. Well, it's a way to answer this question. Okay, so fine, we're making open source do-it-yourself hardware. Okay, stop fighting how you get money. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not the relevant question. Okay, how do we close the loop? So maybe there is an alliance between technologists and artists, right? And through that alliance, we can move people enough so that we can reliably close the loop, get something back that could sustain the developments. You see, so you know, we have to acknowledge that, you know, that we are sabotaging our ways to sustain ourselves within capitalism. So knowing that, what are the other channels that we can create so that we can make our work sustainable? Okay, so thinking about intellectual property or different type of licenses or giving ourselves a monopoly, you know, this is like short-term thinking. This is like I don't know. I don't find a lot of imagination in these kind of things. Okay, let me make a license that defends the commons, and if corporations want to use it, they have to pay. But if the commons, you know, this is like the immediate first order reaction of somebody operating in this kind of mind frame.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're trying to do is go beyond
outsmarting the system.
Yeah, we want to go beyond that. Like, how can we build different hacks? How can we open new channels? Okay, and here we're exploring that. Okay, so there could be a symbiosis between an artist and a technologist. Okay, where the artistic creation feeds and grounds on the work of engineers that has an impact. Okay, somewhere in the world, something real, right? So we can make art that is inspired by this impact, by this real work, by the, you know. So there may be that, you know, the engineer enhances the quality of the art by grounding it in some reality and impact. And at the same time, the engineer needs the artist to communicate what they're doing, to package it in a way that moves people emotionally. And you know what I'm saying? So yeah, so it's a sort of an inversion where the artist feeds the engineer instead of the engineer that makes more money in capitalism goes to the theater and feeds the artist, right? So this is the kind of exploration. That's my take on it, because that's my experience. But there's a lot of people in this kind of stuff, in this initiative that you know, see it in a different way, but which is good, because we all meet in the middle and somehow develop this practice. Right, but that's my take on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So guys, we're already on the top of the hour. We're going to start to wrap up here. Hoping that you liked, Amanda, to jump in here. I know that you were seeking for us to have a peer-to-peer conversation between you and me. But I felt that this could be a very good,
wonderful,
a friendly and good environment in order for us to reconnect again. And we do this weekly every Friday, so feel free to come back if you want next week. I'll because it's a permanent link. This
so Zoom, we can jump back in.
Yeah, you can jump back, and that's okay. And just to hear some final thoughts. Who wants to share some final thoughts? Feel free, please. I think that TV just gave him his final thoughts. So
yes,
Stefan, Tim, Lauren, Stefan, and yeah, we can close up here.
Yeah, no, thanks. It was lovely to meet you, Amanda, and it was a very interesting conversation. I think, yeah, I think there's lots to chew on. I mean, I think you know, the ways that we operate at different scales is a big question that we need to work on, and say, where can we be useful? What's the preferred outcomes we can get at in the right spaces at the right time? And it doesn't have to be the world, but it has to be something solid. So yeah, thanks. It was a good session today, and yeah, everyone have a good weekend.
I'm very pleasantly surprised finding some of my very known persons here. I had no clue. I thought maybe Vinicius is there, so no, suddenly. And then the topics were amazing. So I'm so happy on the philosophical background. We did a lot of ontological explorations, I think, today. And that's on the edge of systems and technology and money. It is very interesting. So yeah.
Lauren, would you like to?
Oh, just an interesting conversation. Nice to see you, Amanda. It's been a while.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, thanks. Nice to meet everyone.
Yeah.
Good weekend.
Thanks so much for sharing.
Folks, love you all. Be well.
Be well.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.